"Careful, rancher," the Apache woman warned. "If you keep looking like that, you'll fall in love." Samuel, a young rancher in his early 20s, tightened his grip on the reins of his horse, Dusty, as they moved along the rugged trail. The wind carried the smell of dry earth and sagebrush, and the distant mountains seemed to touch the sky, silent and commanding. Samuel had grown up surrounded by this land, his father's ranch stretching over acres of wild beauty and challenge. From the first time he had held a rope and ridden into the early morning mist, he had felt a deep connection with the earth, the animals, and the rhythm of the seasons. He had always been a careful man, not easily distracted, focused on work that demanded patience, strength, and attention. Ranch life was not easy, and Samuel knew that every day brought its own set of tests. The cattle needed tending, fences needed repair, and storms could arrive without warning. Yet, Samuel felt a sense of peace when he was out here alone with Dusty. There was no rush, no judgment, just the quiet hum of nature and the endless sky. On this particular morning, Samuel was scouting the far edges of his property. A herd of cattle had wandered close to the border of the neighboring lands, and he needed to ensure they did not stray too far. As he rode, his sharp eyes scanned the horizon, noting the dry riverbeds, the clusters of sage, and the occasional hawk circling above. The land was familiar, but it always held surprises: a sudden dip in the trail, a patch of wildflowers, or the footprints of a coyote. Samuel took pride in knowing every ridge and hollow, every shadow that moved with the sun. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his attention. He slowed Dusty to a walk, squinting against the morning light. Among the rocks and tall grass he saw a figure, a woman, kneeling as she carefully picked plants from the soil. Her hair, dark and shining, caught the sunlight, and her movements were calm, deliberate, and full of grace. Samuel felt an unexpected pull, a curiosity that was difficult to explain. He had never seen her before, though he had wandered these lands countless times. The woman looked up briefly, sensing someone's presence. Her dark eyes met his, sharp and cautious, yet not unkind. Samuel straightened in his saddle and gave a small nod of greeting. She hesitated but returned a subtle gesture, a tilt of the head that felt like an invitation to speak, yet also a warning. Samuel felt a mixture of awe and respect. There was something different about her, not just in her appearance but in the way she moved, the confidence in her posture, the way she seemed completely at ease with the land around her. For a moment, they simply watched each other. The wind whispered through the grass and Dusty shifted nervously under Samuel, sensing the tension in the air. Finally, Samuel spoke, his voice careful and soft. "Good morning. I didn't mean to startle you." The woman, Naya, smiled faintly. "You are far from the main trail, rancher," she said. Her voice was calm, melodic, and carried the weight of someone who had spent her life listening to the sounds of nature. "This land, it does not always welcome strangers." Samuel nodded, feeling a little embarrassed. "I'm Samuel. I own the ranch to the east. I was just checking on the cattle." He gestured vaguely toward the distant herd, grazing peacefully near the river. "I didn't expect anyone else to be out here." Naya's eyes softened slightly, though her expression remained guarded. "I am Naya. I come here often to gather herbs and medicines for my people." She stood gracefully, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The land gives us what we need if we know how to listen." Samuel felt a rush of respect. He had always admired people who could live in harmony with the land, who understood its hidden secrets. He had grown up on this land, yet he realized he had only ever known it in terms of work and survival. Naya's words made him think differently, as if he were seeing the earth through new eyes. For the next hour, they talked cautiously, exchanging stories of the land and its creatures. Samuel learned about the different plants Naya gathered and their uses, some for healing, some for flavor, and some for rituals that honored the earth. Naya asked about the ranch, the cattle, and the challenges he faced. They spoke in a rhythm that felt natural, a mix of curiosity and respect. Samuel noticed how she listened, truly listened, not just waiting to speak but absorbing every word. As the sun climbed higher, Samuel realized he had lost track of time. He glanced toward the river, noting the cattle beginning to drift. "I should head back," he said reluctantly. Dusty shifted, sensing the journey ahead. Naya nodded, her expression unreadable. "Be careful, rancher. The land can be generous, but it also tests those who walk it." Samuel smiled, unsure why her words lingered in his mind long after they parted. As he rode away, he found himself glancing back, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. She was already tending to the plants, focused and calm, yet he could not shake the feeling that this meeting had been different from any he had experienced before. Something about her presence left a quiet imprint on his heart. The rest of the day passed in a blur of chores and responsibilities, yet Samuel could not forget Naya. He found himself wandering to the same edges of his property, hoping to see her again. Each glance toward the distant rocks made his heart race, though he told himself he was only curious, only wanting to understand the woman who had appeared so suddenly in his life. Evening came, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Samuel sat on a fence post, looking at the horizon. Dusty nuzzled him, sensing the restless energy he could not explain. He thought about Naya, her words, and the ease with which she moved through the land. For the first time, Samuel realized that there was more to life than the daily routines of ranch work. There was a world of quiet beauty, mystery, and connection that he had barely begun to notice. That night, as the wind rustled the leaves and the stars blinked into existence, Samuel lay on his cot, thinking about the encounter. He remembered the way Naya's eyes held both caution and warmth, the way her voice carried wisdom and subtle humor. He knew deep down that this was the start of something significant, though he could not yet name it. And so, the story of Samuel and Naya began, not with grand gestures or dramatic events, but with a quiet meeting on the edge of the ranch, where curiosity, respect, and a hint of destiny brought them together. It was a beginning that promised friendship, understanding, and perhaps, if they were brave enough, love. Days turned into weeks, and Samuel found himself drawn more and more to the edges of his ranch. Every morning, he would ride Dusty along the same trails, not just to check on the cattle, but in the hope of seeing Naya again. He told himself it was curiosity, an innocent interest in the stranger who moved through the land with such grace and knowledge. Yet deep down, he knew it was something more, a pull he could not explain. Naya, meanwhile, had noticed him too. At first, she had been wary, cautious of a rancher who might not understand the ways of her people or the respect required when wandering sacred parts of the land. But she had also sensed something different about Samuel. Unlike others she had encountered, he moved carefully, spoke respectfully, and observed rather than intruded. There was no arrogance in him, no rush to dominate the land or its creatures. He was patient, quiet, and attentive. These qualities had earned a place of trust in her mind, though she did not yet fully admit it. Their encounters grew more frequent, though always accidental, or so they pretended. Samuel would find himself repairing fences near a patch of wild herbs, only to notice Naya gathering leaves or flowers nearby. She would greet him with a nod, and he would respond, and soon simple words led to conversations. They shared stories about the land, about their days, about the small victories and challenges each faced. Samuel would tell her about the cattle, about Dusty's stubbornness, and the long hours spent under the sun fixing fences. Naya would explain which plants healed wounds, which eased fatigue, and which were sacred to her people. One afternoon, Samuel found her sitting by a small creek, her feet in the cool water. The sunlight danced on her hair, turning it into shades of copper and gold. He approached slowly, unsure whether she would welcome him, yet hoping she would. Naya looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. "You are persistent," she said with a faint smile, her voice carrying warmth and teasing undertone. Samuel laughed softly, feeling a blush creep up his neck. I could say the same about you. It seems we keep meeting, no matter how I try to avoid it. Naya tilted her head, considering him. Perhaps the land wants it this way. Perhaps it is teaching you something. Samuel sat beside her on a flat rock, careful not to step too close. And what is that? He asked, genuinely curious. That life is more than work and routine, Naya said simply. It is in these moments, the quiet, the observation, the respect for what surrounds you. Not everyone can see it. Samuel nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. He had spent so many years focused on chores, schedules, and survival that he had forgotten to notice the smaller, quieter things. The songs of the birds, the way the wind whispered through the grass, the way sunlight turned ordinary leaves into a mosaic of colors. Naya reminded him to see the world differently, to pay attention not just to what was needed, but to what was beautiful. As the days passed, their friendship deepened. Samuel began leaving small gifts for her, a piece of bread, fresh water, or sometimes a hand-carved wooden charm he had made himself. Naya accepted them graciously, though she rarely asked for anything. She, in turn, shared knowledge he had never imagined. She taught him which plants could be brewed for tea, which berries were safe to eat, and how to find signs of animals hidden in plain sight. With every lesson, Samuel felt closer to the land and closer to her. One evening, after a long day of tending the cattle, Samuel saw Naya sitting near a fire she had built for herself. The flames flickered in the twilight, casting soft shadows across her face. He dismounted Dusty quietly, not wanting to startle her, and walked slowly toward the fire. "Evening," he said softly. "Good evening, rancher," she replied, a smile playing on her lips. "You are becoming predictable." Samuel chuckled, sitting on a nearby log. "Predictable is better than lost, I suppose." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant call of a hawk. Samuel felt a sense of peace he had rarely experienced. With Naya, there were no demands, no expectations beyond mutual respect. And yet he felt something stirring inside him, a warmth, a longing he could not quite name. Over time, he noticed that he looked forward to these encounters more than anything else. He began to plan his workday so he could be near the areas she frequented, and he found himself watching the horizon for any sign of her presence. Naya, too, began to anticipate his arrival. She would finish her tasks a little earlier, linger a little longer, and even leave small trails of herbs where he might stumble upon them. Their unspoken understanding grew, a silent dance of mutual recognition and respect. One day, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Dark clouds swallowed the sky, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets. Samuel was in the middle of moving the cattle when he saw Naya struggling to protect her small bundle of herbs. Without thinking, he rode Dusty through the rain to help her. Together, they covered the plants and made a quick shelter using nearby branches. Soaked and muddy, they laughed at the absurdity of their situation. And in that moment, Samuel realized that he cared deeply for her, not just for her knowledge or her grace, but for the way she faced the world with courage and calm. As the storm passed, Samuel offered her a dry cloak from his pack. She accepted it, her fingers brushing his for a brief, electrifying moment. Neither spoke, but their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition that their friendship had grown into something more, something delicate and fragile, yet powerful. Weeks turned into months, and their bond strengthened. They spent mornings together tending to the land, afternoons walking along the trails, and evenings sharing stories by the fire. Samuel learned about Naya's family and her people, their traditions and values, and he began to understand the depth of her connection to the land. Naya, in turn, learned about Samuel's life on the ranch, the hardships his family endured, and the quiet pride he felt in working the land. Despite the growing closeness, there was always a layer of caution. Samuel knew that their worlds were different, that neighbors might not understand, and that the future held uncertainties. Nea, too, was aware of the delicate balance between trust and exposure. They moved carefully, nurturing their connection without forcing it, letting it grow naturally like the plants Nea so lovingly tended. One afternoon, as they rested by the creek after a long day, Nea looked at Samuel with a teasing glint in her eyes. "You are learning quickly, rancher," she said, "but be careful. The land teaches lessons in many ways. Some are gentle, some are harsh, and some lessons touch the heart." Samuel looked at her, unsure what she meant. "Touch the heart?" he asked. She smiled softly, her gaze drifting to the flowing water. "Yes, some connections are stronger than you expect. Some feelings can change the way you see everything." Samuel felt a shiver run through him. He understood her words in a way he could not fully articulate. He had felt it, the quiet stirrings of something profound, something beyond friendship. Yet he also respected the caution in her tone. Nea was teaching him, guiding him, without ever forcing him to understand too quickly. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the land, Samuel and Nea packed up their things and prepared to part ways for the night. They exchanged a quiet nod, a gesture that had become their own unspoken language, full of understanding and subtle affection. Samuel rode Dusty back toward the ranch, his mind racing with thoughts of the day, of Nea, and of the bond that was growing stronger with each encounter. That night, as Samuel lay on his cot, he replayed every moment in his mind, the laughter, the shared tasks, the quiet lessons, and the teasing words. He realized that his life had changed, subtly but irrevocably. Nea had shown him a new way of seeing the world, of seeing the land, and of seeing himself. And in the quiet corners of his heart, he knew that what he felt for her was growing into something he could no longer ignore. The friendship between Samuel and Nea was no longer simple. It was layered, deep, and full of promise. And though neither fully admitted it, both sensed that their paths were intertwined, that the land itself had brought them together for a reason, and that the lessons of patience, respect, and understanding were just the beginning. The days grew warmer as summer settled over the plains, and Samuel's thoughts continued to drift toward Nea. Their friendship had grown into a quiet companionship, a rhythm they shared without needing to speak too much. Every morning he looked for signs of her, perhaps a flash of dark hair among the bushes, the faint sound of footsteps on the dry grass, or the sight of her leaning over the river gathering herbs. Each encounter filled him with a warmth he could not name, a sense that life had become richer, brighter, and more vivid. For Nea, the attention was equally noticeable, though she approached it with a careful heart. She appreciated Samuel's kindness, his patience, and the genuine interest he showed in the land and in her. But she also felt a flutter of something new, something she had never experienced before. His presence stirred a curiosity and affection that she knew she must handle with caution. Nea had been taught to respect boundaries, both for herself and for others, and she was aware that feelings, once acknowledged, could complicate everything. One late afternoon, Samuel found Nea perched on a rock near the edge of the creek, her hands busy sorting a small bundle of herbs. The golden light of the setting sun touched her face, making her features glow softly. Samuel slowed Dusty as he approached, unsure of how to greet her today. He had visited countless times, but now there was a quiet tension in the air, as if something unspoken hovered between them. "Good afternoon," he said softly, tipping his hat. Nea looked up and a small smile played on her lips. "Rancher," she replied lightly, "you arrive at the same time every day. You are predictable." Samuel laughed, feeling his nerves ease slightly. "I suppose some predictability is comforting," he said. "It gives me a reason to hope for the day." Nea tilted her head, her eyes locking onto his with a sharp, knowing gaze. "Hope," she repeated, as if testing the word. "And what is it that you hope for, Samuel?" Samuel hesitated. He had thought about it countless times but had never found the courage to voice it. I hope to understand the land better," he said finally, "and I suppose to understand myself better as well." Naya studied him silently for a moment. The creek gurgled softly in the background and a gentle breeze moved through the trees. Then she spoke, her tone carrying a mixture of warmth and warning. "Careful, rancher," she said softly. "If you keep looking like that, you'll fall in love." Samuel froze, the words hanging in the air. He blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Fall in love?" he asked, his voice quieter than intended. Naya nodded slightly, her eyes steady on his. "Yes, love is not always simple and it can arrive when you least expect it. It can change everything you thought you knew about your life." Samuel's heart began to race. He had felt a connection growing, a bond that went beyond friendship, but hearing it spoken aloud brought a new intensity. He looked at Naya, searching her face for any hint of jest, but her expression was calm, sincere, and firm. There was no teasing here, only a gentle caution, a truth spoken with care. He swallowed, trying to steady his thoughts. I hadn't realized it," he admitted honestly. "I think I might be feeling it, though I wasn't sure how to name it." Naya smiled softly, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Feelings are not always simple, Samuel. They can be beautiful, yes, but also challenging. They test patience, courage, and honesty. You must be careful." Samuel nodded, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. Naya's words were not a warning to stay away, but a reminder that love, once acknowledged, required careful attention and respect. He realized that he wanted to honor her, to be patient, and to let their bond grow naturally. Over the following days, their encounters took on a new dimension. Every glance, every gesture, every shared laugh carried an undercurrent of unspoken emotion. Samuel noticed how his heart leapt whenever she smiled, how her voice lingered in his mind long after she had gone, and how the smallest touches, her hand brushing against a plant he handed her, the way she rested her hand briefly on the rock beside him, sent a warmth through him he could not ignore. Naya, too, felt the pull of their connection. She found herself thinking about Samuel when he was not around, imagining his quiet laughter, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about the land, and the gentleness with which he treated Dusty and the cattle. She had never expected to feel this way about someone outside her people, yet the feeling was undeniable. Her warning had not been a joke. It was a truth she felt in her heart, one that now applied to herself as well. One afternoon, a challenge presented itself that brought them even closer. A young calf had wandered into a rocky ravine, unable to climb back out. Samuel discovered it during his routine check, and he knew he could not rescue it alone. He called out for Naya, who was nearby gathering herbs, and together they worked carefully to coax the frightened animal back to safety. They spoke in low, calm tones, their hands brushing as they guided the calf, each moment reinforcing their growing bond. When the calf finally stumbled back onto solid ground, both were breathless and muddy, yet triumphant. Samuel looked at Naya, his eyes full of gratitude and admiration. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said sincerely. Naya smiled, her cheeks flushed from exertion. "And I could not have done it without you. We make a good team." There was a pause, a quiet moment when neither spoke, and the tension between them became almost tangible. Samuel's heart pounded in his chest as he realized how deeply he cared for her. Naya's eyes held a softness he had never seen before, and he knew that she, too, felt the same pull. Yet they both understood the need for caution, for patience, and for mutual respect. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Samuel and Naya walked along the riverbank together. The air was filled with the scent of wet earth and wildflowers, and the gentle sound of water flowing over rocks created a peaceful backdrop. "Do you ever think about the future?" Samuel asked quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. Naya considered the question carefully. "I do," she said at last, "but the future is not always certain. We can plan and hope, but the land and life has its own path." Samuel nodded, understanding her words. "I suppose the important thing is the present then, the moments we share now." "Yes," Naya agreed, smiling softly. "The present is where we find truth, friendship, and perhaps even love, if we are brave enough to recognize it." Samuel felt a shiver of anticipation. He wanted to speak, to express the feelings that had grown inside him for weeks, yet he hesitated, respecting the caution that Naya had always maintained. He realized that love was not something to rush. It was something to nurture, to understand, and to honor. In the days that followed, their interactions continued with the same delicate balance of affection and caution. Samuel learned to read the subtle signs in Naya's expressions, the small gestures that indicated her mood, and the way she responded to his presence. Naya, in turn, observed his sincerity, his dedication to the land, and the quiet strength that underpinned his character. Their connection grew deeper, richer, and more meaningful, built on trust, respect, and an unspoken understanding that neither of them would force the other to act before the time was right. One morning, Samuel found a small bundle of herbs carefully placed near his horse's water trough. Attached was a note, written in neat handwriting, for courage, for patience, and for moments of clarity. "Use them wisely." Samuel smiled, touched by the gesture, realizing that Naya's thoughts were with him even when she was not present. He held the herbs in his hands, feeling the weight of her care and consideration. It was a simple act, yet it spoke volumes about the bond that had grown between them. Samuel understood that love, like the land they both cherished, required attention, patience, and respect. It could not be rushed, forced, or demanded. It had to be nurtured carefully, with thought and care. As the sun set and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, Samuel sat on a rock, gazing at the horizon. He thought about Naya, her words, her presence, and the quiet warning she had given him. He knew that her caution was not a barrier but a guide, a reminder that the feelings he harbored were precious and worth protecting. He realized that he was ready to honor them, to cherish them, and to let them grow naturally. And so, the story of Samuel and Naya continued, a delicate dance of friendship, trust, and emerging love. Their hearts had begun to recognize the possibility of something deeper, and though the path ahead was uncertain, they were both willing to walk it together, carefully, patiently, and with a growing awareness that love, once acknowledged, could change everything. Summer was at its peak, and the sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the vast plains. The land was alive with the buzz of insects, the rustle of grass, and the distant calls of birds soaring over the mountains. For Samuel, these long days had always meant hard work, repairing fences, moving cattle, and tending to every corner of the ranch. Yet in recent months the work had taken on a new meaning. Every task, every moment spent under the sun, felt lighter when he imagined sharing it with Naya. Naya, too, felt the weight of summer's intensity. Gathering herbs in the heat was exhausting, but she found joy in the quiet companionship of the land and in the knowledge that Samuel might be nearby. Their friendship had grown stronger, rooted in shared respect and the subtle understanding that each cared for the other deeply. But even as they laughed, taught each other, and worked side by side, there were challenges looming, challenges neither of them could ignore. One morning, Samuel noticed the cattle acting strangely. Several of them had wandered closer to the rocky edges of the land, where the terrain was treacherous. Dusty shifted nervously beneath him as he surveyed the area. Samuel realized that a storm had passed through during the night, washing away some of the trails and leaving loose rocks in its wake. He knew he needed to secure the herd quickly before any accidents occurred. As he rode toward the cattle, he spotted Naya near the riverbank, gathering herbs and listening to the distant flow of water. "Naya," he called out, "the cattle are near the cliffs. We need to move them before someone gets hurt." Naya's eyes widened, and without hesitation, she dropped her basket and ran toward him. "Let's work together," she said, determination in her voice. "We can guide them safely." Together they moved quickly, guiding the herd away from danger. Samuel called out instructions, and Naya used her knowledge of the terrain to anticipate where the cattle might wander next. Their movements were synchronized, almost instinctively. Hands brushed, voices overlapped, and for a moment neither noticed the intensity of their growing connection, their hearts racing not just from exertion, but from the closeness of the other. By the time the last calf was safely returned to the meadow, they were both exhausted, drenched in sweat and dust. Samuel looked at Naya, his chest heaving, and realized how much he had come to rely on her, not just for help with the land, but for the calm and understanding she brought into his life. "You're incredible," he said finally, his voice sincere. "I couldn't have done it without you," Naya smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I couldn't have done it without you. We make a good team." Their eyes met, and for a moment words were unnecessary. The bond between them had grown stronger, deeper, and more complex. It was no longer just friendship. It was something that touched the heart, something both exciting and frightening. But life, as it often does, brought new challenges. Word of Samuel's frequent meetings with Naya began to circulate among neighbors and other ranchers. Some whispered behind closed doors, questioning why a young rancher spent so much time with a woman from another community. Samuel heard the rumors but chose to ignore them, focusing instead on the tasks at hand. Naya, however, could sense the cautious glances and hushed voices when she ventured closer to the town or the nearby settlements. Despite these whispers, they refused to let outside opinions interfere with their connection. They found solace in the quiet places of the land, by the river, on hidden trails, and under the shade of large trees. These moments became their sanctuary, a space where they could be themselves without fear of judgment. One particularly hot afternoon, Samuel and Naya were walking along a dry creek bed when they heard a commotion ahead. A young foal had become stuck in a muddy patch, struggling and panicked. Without hesitation, Samuel rushed forward and Naya followed closely behind. Working together, they managed to free the foal, mud clinging to their boots and clothes. Breathless and laughing at their shared mess, Samuel looked at Naya with admiration. "Every day with you is an adventure," he said, shaking mud from his hands. "And every adventure teaches something new," Naya replied, smiling, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "Even about ourselves." It was in these shared challenges that Samuel realized how deeply he trusted her. She was more than a companion. She was a partner in every sense of the word, someone who balanced his strength with her knowledge, his caution with her intuition, and his heart with her wisdom. Naya felt the same way, understanding that Samuel's steady presence brought a sense of calm and security she had not expected to find outside her people. But even as their bond strengthened, the world around them reminded them of its unpredictability. A sudden drought hit the region, drying up streams and making the land harsher than ever. Water became scarce, crops struggled, and the cattle were harder to manage. Samuel and Naya worked tirelessly to ensure the survival of both the ranch and her people's nearby lands. They dug makeshift channels to direct water, shared knowledge about which plants could survive with little moisture, and relied on each other's strengths to navigate the challenges. Through these trials, their friendship deepened into something that neither could deny. Long days of labor were followed by evenings sitting together, sharing small meals, telling stories, and finding comfort in each other's presence. Samuel found himself watching Naya as she worked, noticing the determination in her movements, the kindness in her eyes, and the quiet strength she carried. Naya, too, noticed Samuel's unwavering commitment, his patience with the animals, and the genuine care he showed for the land and its creatures. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, Samuel and Naya sat on a hill overlooking the ranch. Dusty grazed nearby and the soft chirping of crickets filled the air. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day and the depth of his feelings. "Naya," he began softly, I don't know what I would do without you. You've become more important to me than I can say." Naya turned to him, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "And you to me, Samuel. We have faced so much together, and yet I feel there is still so much ahead of us, so much we do not know." He nodded, understanding her caution. "I know, but whatever comes, I want to face it with you," she smiled, a mixture of warmth and seriousness in her expression. "Then we will face it together, carefully, patiently, and with respect for what we share. Nothing worth having is rushed." In the following weeks, their relationship continued to grow under the challenges they faced. Neighbors, whispers became background noise as Samuel and Naya focused on survival, cooperation, and understanding. Their love, though unspoken, was evident in small gestures, a hand resting briefly on a shoulder, a shared glance, a quiet smile after a long day of work. One day, while inspecting the water supply for the ranch, Samuel noticed Naya observing a group of birds in the distance. She had a notebook in her hand, recording observations about the land and its creatures. Curious, he walked closer. "What are you writing?" he asked gently. Naya looked up, smiling softly. "I am noting the signs of life, Samuel. Even in the hardest times, life finds a way. It survives, and we must survive too." Samuel nodded, feeling the truth in her words. Their hardships were real, but together they could endure. The land tested them, their communities tested them, and their hearts tested them. Yet in every challenge, they discovered strength, courage, and the depth of their bond. As the season began to shift toward autumn, Samuel and Naya's autumn settled over the plains. The land began to change. The tall grasses turned shades of gold and amber, and the air carried a crispness that made every breath feel fresh and invigorating. The days grew shorter, and the evenings were painted with brilliant sunsets that stretched across the horizon. Samuel had noticed these changes with a sense of wonder, but he also noticed something else, a quiet certainty in his heart about the bond he shared with Naya. Their friendship, which had grown carefully and patiently over the months, had now become something far deeper. The trials they had faced, the storm that drove them together, the wandering cattle, the drought, and the whispered judgments of neighbors, had forged a connection that was resilient, strong, and full of quiet affection. Samuel knew that his feelings for Naya were no longer just admiration or curiosity. They had blossomed into love, and from the way Naya's eyes met his, he could sense that she felt the same. One late afternoon, Samuel rode out to the edge of the ranch, Dusty moving steadily over the uneven terrain. He had heard that Naya was gathering herbs near the river, and he hoped to see her before the sun dipped too low. As he approached, he noticed her sitting beneath a large oak tree, her basket filled with green leaves and colorful flowers. The sunlight filtered through the branches, casting dappled patterns across her face. She looked serene, focused on her task, yet there was a sense of anticipation in the way she moved. "Good evening, Naya," Samuel called softly, dismounting and approaching her. Naya looked up, a gentle smile on her lips. "Good evening, Samuel. The day has been kind to you." "As kind as it can be," he replied, settling on the grass beside her. "And to you," Naya nodded. "I have found much to be grateful for. The land continues to provide, and the work is not without reward." She paused, studying him carefully. "And how is your heart today, rancher?" Samuel blinked, slightly startled by the question. He realized she could see deeper than most people ever could. "My heart is full," he said honestly. "Full of the land, the work, and you." Naya's eyes softened, and for a moment neither spoke. The river flowed gently nearby, the leaves rustled in the wind, and Dusty grazed quietly in the distance. The silence was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than emptiness. Finally, Naya spoke, her voice low and steady. "We have come far together, Samuel." Through trials, work, and quiet moments, we have learned much about each other. And yet, she hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the river. There is still the world outside this place. Our communities, our families, the expectations of others. These things are real and they must be considered. Samuel took her hand gently, his fingers intertwining with hers. I know, he said, and I do not want to rush anything, but I do know that what we have is precious. And I am willing to face whatever comes as long as we face it together. Nea smiled softly, the tension in her shoulders easing. Then we shall face it together, she agreed. Carefully, patiently, with respect for each other and the life we share. In the days that followed, their bond continued to deepen. They worked side by side, guiding the cattle, tending the land, and gathering herbs. Each task was a shared experience, filled with laughter, quiet conversation, and the subtle touches that spoke volumes. Samuel would leave small gifts for Nea, a piece of bread, a carved charm, or a bundle of fresh flowers, while she would leave him notes or herbs that carried meaning and care. One chilly morning, Samuel found Nea near a patch of wildflowers, crouched as she examined the plants. The air was crisp, and the first frost of autumn had begun to settle over the land. He approached quietly, not wanting to startle her but also eager to be near her. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning, Samuel," Nea replied, looking up with a gentle smile. "The frost makes the flowers delicate today. One must be careful when handling them." Samuel knelt beside her, his eyes meeting hers. "And one must be careful with hearts as well," he said quietly, thinking of her warning months ago. Nea's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Yes. Hearts, like flowers, require care, patience, and understanding. They cannot be rushed or forced." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to fade away. The frost-covered grass, the distant mountains, and even dusty grazing nearby became background to the connection between them. Samuel felt a swell of emotion he could no longer hold back. "Nea," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I do not want to hide my feelings any longer. I care for you more than I have ever cared for anyone. You have taught me so much about life, about the land, and about myself. And I love you." Nea's eyes glistened with emotion, and a soft smile broke across her face. "Samuel, I love you too," she whispered. "I have felt this for some time, though I waited, careful to respect both our lives. But my heart cannot deny the truth any longer." In that moment, the bond between them shifted. Friendship became love, quiet admiration became deep affection, and the lessons of patience, respect, and understanding culminated in a recognition of their heart's truth. They embraced gently, aware that the world beyond the plains might be uncertain, but certain in the knowledge that they had found each other. The following weeks were filled with small celebrations of their love. They continued their work on the ranch and in the surrounding land, but each task was colored by the warmth of their connection. Samuel would ride alongside Nea, sharing stories and laughter, while she guided him in ways he had never known, teaching him the subtle ways of the land, the animals, and the world around them. Neighbors and communities, once skeptical, began to notice the quiet strength of their partnership. Samuel and Nea handled the attention with grace, never flaunting their bond, but also never hiding it. Their love was respectful, patient, and grounded in the reality of their shared lives. It was a love that did not demand but nurtured, a love that did not rush but grew steadily, like the plants Nea tended or the cattle Samuel guided. One crisp evening, they sat together on a hill overlooking the ranch. The sky was painted in shades of violet and gold, and the first stars of the season began to appear. Dusty rested nearby, content and calm. Samuel took Nea's hand in his, feeling the warmth of her fingers intertwined with his own. "Do you ever think about the future?" Samuel asked, his voice thoughtful. "I do," Nea replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon, "and I know that it is uncertain. But I also know that whatever comes, we can face it together. We have learned to trust each other, to support each other, and to respect each other's hearts." Samuel nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "Then we will face it side by side," he said. "No matter what challenges arise, no matter what changes the world brings." And so, Samuel and Naya built a life together, quietly and carefully, nurturing their love through everyday moments and shared experiences. They continued to work the land, care for the animals, and respect the delicate balance between their worlds. Their bond became a foundation, not just for love, but for a partnership rooted in understanding, patience, and trust. Over time, their love became known to others, not as a scandal or a shock, but as a testament to the power of patience, respect, and connection. Samuel and Naya proved that love could grow naturally, without rush or force, and that the deepest bonds were forged not in grand gestures, but in small acts of care, understanding, and devotion. As the seasons turned, Samuel and Naya remained by each other's side, facing each challenge with courage, grace, and a quiet determination. Their hearts, once cautious and careful, had found a home in each other. The land that had brought them together had also nurtured their love, teaching them lessons about patience, resilience, and the beauty of life shared with someone who truly understands you. And in the end, it was the simple, quiet moments, the shared laughter, the guidance of the land, the gentle touches, and the unspoken understanding that defined their love. Samuel and Naya knew that they had found something rare and precious, a love that was patient, enduring, and true, built not on haste or passion alone, but on respect, trust, and the knowledge that two hearts could grow together, carefully and beautifully, through every season of life. Naya found themselves reflecting on all they had accomplished. They had moved cattle safely, preserved water, and maintained the delicate balance between their worlds. They had laughed, learned, and leaned on each other through both physical and emotional trials. And quietly, they had fallen into a connection that was becoming impossible to ignore. By the time the first cool winds of autumn arrived, their partnership was no longer just practical, it was a promise. A promise of trust, understanding, and the possibility of love, nurtured through hardship and care. Samuel and Naya understood that the challenges they had faced were only the beginning of life's lessons. But they also understood that together, they could meet whatever came next, carefully, patiently, and with hearts that were slowly, unmistakably intertwined.